My summary of like the pod tonight would just be, the more I dig into the existing financial system, the more I realize it's run by puppets that have no fucking clue what they're talking about. When you zoom out, the atrocities that are being performed by the existing financial rulers are more disgusting than you can ever imagine. And I'm just more bullish on Bitcoin than ever. And I just can't wait to move on to Bitcoin standing, because I just can't be more positive about just sound money and what it will bring, because the amount of corruption that will be removed from the world is just immense. And the longer I'm in Bitcoin, the more bullish I get and the more hopeful I get.
Recording is in progress and we are back. This is the world's most bullish podcast, brought to you by Mr. All-In, aka the $1 trillion man, Dr. Evil 10%, aka the People's Champ, myself, Sir Never Look, aka the Excellence of Execution, and of course, once again, Mrs. No Show, nowhere to be seen, but still she fulfills our ESG role as what? The gay, Ukrainian, cross-dressing, transgender. Anything else have I missed out?
We need to say he's got some Ethiopian in there.
Yeah,
and he's got some Cherokee.
Yeah, may even be dealing in shitcoins as well, just to make sure that we cover all bases.
Too far.
Too much.
Everything else is fine, but let's not do shitcoin. No. We can't allow that.
Yeah. To be fair, Mrs. No Show is never shitcoin, so yeah, too far.
Yeah, virgin shitcoiner.
Yeah.
But
what's going on, boys?
Man, this is epic. This is what I've lived about, I don't know, last 6, 7, 8 years of my life since I got into Bitcoin and I got that orange pill. This is it. This is kind of crazy, right? It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. It's like it's a big question. How can we paper over the cracks? It's just like the cracks are getting too big now. It's not just, oh yeah, let's put a bit of paint over. It's like, you're going to need a plastering. Those walls are fucked.
Oh, yeah. This is the most bullish I've ever been. It's just insane. Because like for the first time, people are buying for the right reasons as well. It's not like, in every other bull run that I've been a part of, people are just buying because price go up, number go up.
No, and I bought for the right reasons.
Yeah, well, to a sense that you probably did, because you hold the coins that you had. But the majority of people that buy don't do it for that reason. They just buy it because number go up, and the second number go down, they offload, and they're part of the harsh correction. But the people that
but there is that, it now, it's that solid base, isn't it? And we know it's somewhere between about 16 and 20,000 sterling, and it's just, when's that solid base? Where's it going to go? Is it 25? Is that now the base? Is that the bottom? That's what I want to see. That's a big question, because we're going to have a big boom. And it's just, I don't know if it's quite going to get the adoption. We're going to see more countries. We're going to see more people adopt it. But when it comes crashing back down because of the speculators, it's like, what is the bottom going to be?
Well, at the moment, the growth has been super sustainable. Like we've pretty much since last week, we've gone up £1,000 a day, pretty much. We started last week, so I think I suppose it was anything from 16 to 19, and now we're on 23. So maybe £1,000 every 2 days. It's nice and steady right now. This is super steady, and so there's no big crash coming on this one. This is just nice sustainable growth, little pullbacks, and then we go again. And obviously, we will get a blow off top. We always do. We know we do. But at some point, this is what we were saying in the last cycle. It's the classic. It's the super cycle. Which one do we go up forever and then destabilize? Because essentially, the global currency of the world, the US dollar, falls, and that is when Bitcoin never comes back down from price. Essentially, we go to infinity and we reprice everything back into sats. And we just figure out, right, the conversion from sats to US dollar doesn't make any sense now. It's like trying to do Zimbabwe dollars to US dollars. You can't do it. It makes no sense. You just go, they're worthless. Dollars are a thing. that's what's going to happen with Bitcoin. You just end up with where you don't have a price against dollars.
I think you're just going to end up with that split, aren't you? You're going to end up with all these developing countries going, fuck the dollar, I'm going to go onto a Bitcoin standard. But you're going to end up with a lot of countries folding into the dollar. And you're going to be left down to the last few currencies, probably the Chinese yen, the dollar, Bitcoin, and probably a couple of others.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to story number one, because story number one.
I'd also like to say as well, because of all of the chaos that's happening, and it will fold into story number one, is that I think all of the pods are kind of, leading up to now, and I feel like we're on that. You ever heard of the Dreyfus 5-stage model of skills acquisition? So when we first started out, and as you said, 6-7 years ago, you're looking into Bitcoin, you were a novice. So you were at skill level 1. And then slowly but surely, you became competent, proficient, and then it goes on to expert. And maybe when we started this whole journey in terms of let's create a podcast, we were all at, or certainly yourself, at expert level. But now, with everything that's going on and all of the terminology that we're going to cover throughout today's stories, I do believe that we're at master level. Because previously, some of the conversations and the terminology that they would have said, I'd have been like, I don't really get that, and would have had to have gone off and had a look at it. Whereas now, it all makes sense. And so I do think that Pod 91 will be brought to you by the three of us at master level. So let's start.
Master's a bold claim.
Yeah. I was nervous listening to the word expert.
Yeah.
I think, most people you can say expert, which I kind of go, okay. But I think master, it's all the intricate details. You need to know everything. It's like the Lightning Network and Taproot. It's knowing all those kind of things. And that's what I'm not as confident on. So I would hesitate in calling myself a master.
Well, let's see. Well, let's see. Yeah, I mean, there will be more, I'm sure, misinformation podcasts where Mr. All-In completely forgets us, or Bitcoin goes to infinity and says, "Screw you, bitches! I'm never coming back." Yeah,
I think when it goes to infinity, it'll just be recording our conversations, which just because we won't have jobs, so we'll be like, let's record this random shit.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. What was the first one? Novice? Is it novice, the first one?
Yeah. So novice, competence, proficiency, expertise, and mastery. And this was a paper written by Stuart and Hubert Dreyfus in 1980. But it applies to a lot of things in terms of like levels of skill.
Yeah. Well, and anyone watching this on YouTube, comment novice if you want to troll us, or comment master if you agree. Have a look.
Yeah.
Don't do any of the others because we won't read them. So if we just move on, because things just seem to have gone into overdrive, right? And I think this is what was missing potentially from the Bitcoin run, because we've got the whole collapse of the banks, and so we've had 5 banks go under so far. We've SVB, Silvergate, Signature Bank, Credit Suisse. Then another one just recently went under, didn't it? Which is the other one? It is this one, which we actually have a story on it. First Republic.
First Republic, yes.
So that's the 5th. That's 5 in 10 days. Which is, if we carry on at that rate, we're out of banks in 2 months, is it?
Yeah, and also as well, we shouldn't underplay this. This was the second and the third largest bank runs and bank collapses since 2008, and Credit Suisse has kind of been a big zombie bank for a number of years, but at the same time, it's a huge established bank, a Swiss bank as well. So, maybe people may want to talk about Silvergate being a crypto bank and it's only small and therefore doesn't really apply to them. Obviously, we know about Silicon Valley Bank being there for entrepreneurs, but everybody's kind of heard of Credit Suisse. So this is big.
Yeah, and then this goes against, right? So if it happens this quick, it goes against everyone folding into the dollar, and then the dollar eventually falls. Essentially, what could happen in these scenarios is these smaller currencies have gone, the middle ones were rocking, but actually it just jumped straight to the big boy, and the US dollar just falls, and we get a much faster collapse. So if we move on to what Balaji is saying, who is the ex-CTO of Coinbase, in summary, what he's been tweeting about is most banks are insolvent in the US. We talked about that. We know it. They do not have the deposits that customers have. So all you got to do is take your money out, prove the bank is insolvent. They are. Then Bitcoin goes to 1 million in 90 days. So this is June 17th. We're at 1 million. Hyperinflation is imminent. Converted 99% of net worth to Bitcoin. US civil war happens. And just to try and put some kind of meat in the game, he then goes, I will bet 1 million US dollar on this. So this is a 40-1 bet because we're currently worth, it was 26K when you made the bet, it's 28 now already. And you put $1 million into escrow, and for 90 days, and if Bitcoin isn't $1 million,
who's taking him up on this?
Yeah, loads of people have been commenting, and apparently he has taken a couple of the bets. So I think he's 2 million in so far, I've read, but who knows? He may have taken more.
That's some conviction. So
some conviction for sure.
So he's got his, I mean, going through is 5 kind of like points. So most banks are insolvent in the US. We know this. We've talked about this. It's fractional reserves. In the US, I think they've got to have 0. So they're all insolvent. We know this. Bitcoin goes to 1 million in 90 days. Very bullish. You know, it's got to be a massive chain of events that to happen.
Apparently that's 11K a day for 90 days.
Well, we're already getting behind because we're not hitting those 11Ks. Hyperinflation is imminent. Well, that's over 50%. You know, so there'd have to be a lot more printing. I mean, they're trying their best, but you know, they, what is it, like 20-odd percent, and then it's somewhere like 10 to 15.
Yeah, well, I think that one is linked to the one before, isn't it? Because if Bitcoin is at 1 million.
Yeah, I suppose I'm looking at the printing angle rather than the actual confidence in the dollar. Okay. Converted 99% of net worth to Bitcoin. So yeah, that's and then
that's
US.
Kind of that one, though, isn't it? Because like he's assuming that 99% of net worth of people goes to Bitcoin. Like, how's that happening? Like, that's a huge amount of money that's got to go from the banks into exchanges into Bitcoin.
When the US dollar goes to infinity, it's worthless, isn't it?
Yeah, the problem is though, Coinbase will crash if we have like a 5K day. In his land, we're having probably 100K days. Good luck getting your deposit into Coinbase and logging in, and Coinbase will be down. It just
won't. It was bad enough, wasn't it, on the last bull run?
It's bad enough when it went to 20K, in the last bull run, or like 60K.
I suppose it could be when the dollar's worthless and you just have the Bitcoin floating around, which people want. Then that could be the fact that everyone's net wealth, even if they haven't got it, is in Bitcoin now.
Yeah, I still doubt that exchanges have bolstered the rails ready for another bull run.
Yeah,
I don't think they're ready.
Oh no. I think they bolstered it to a certain degree, but can the exchanges exist now handle billions? Like, billions. I'm not talking millions, billions.
Yes, we've got to move from hundreds of thousands to millions, really, in transactions, haven't we? In terms of people, which is the next level, then billions, which is a massive step. But I think, you know, if you look at it as one that hyperinflation, money's fucked, it doesn't matter how many people have actually got Bitcoin. It's a fact that the dollar's now worthless. So there could be that mistranslation there. Now, the final point is US civil war happens. It's already on the verge. They've been poking this bear for years, and it's just like, what's the saying is kind of like, there's a saying around it that basically causing attention amongst people stops them looking up. I can't remember what it is.
Divide and conquer. Yeah,
divide and conquer. But they've divided for so long that mental health has been affected. that relationships between family, but they're so divisive about a blue and a red tie. They're so divisive about religion. They're so divisive about guns. They're so divisive about LGBT. But some people are willing to like support, paedophiles because they don't want to be seen as going against what they've stated their belief to be. It's insane times in the US particularly. So I just think this is on the cusp and has been for a while.
Well, I would say the whole Donald Trump potential arrest coming up could well form a civil war internally. It could be one of the catalysts to this as well.
You think every lost election, it's been these massive fights, hasn't it? And if there's
exactly,
and the Democrats it's the Republicans. They did it in 2016, and then when they thought they may be losing the election for 2020, they started doing it again. So it's both sides who do it.
Yeah, and ultimately, he has been saying the truth in terms of he said something along the lines of a corrupt police force. We know that Donald Trump is not the guy that is playing ball, and obviously they don't want him to be back in power. And anyhow he gets to the elections, he will win the election with a landslide over sleepy Joe Biden.
Yeah. But I thought Biden got a record amount of votes last time. People even turned up from the dead to vote for him.
Because he would win on a landslide with just a single issue, which is pull out of Ukraine. Stop it. Stop, because it seems to be America can't wait for World War III because they need something that big to hide this. They need World War III to explain the collapse. Because it's almost as if what's happened before, I think they tried to pin it on Trump, but it didn't really, they know it's not really going to work. So the pandemic kind of has happened, but can you really explain the collapse of everything when really a lot of the actions you took were kind of purposeful? Yeah, okay, let's pretend the virus was killing everyone, but everyone kind of knows it wasn't now. So you can't really explain the collapse on that. They need something bigger. And I think they went with climate change for a little bit and went, climate change is going to destroy everything. They're not going to buy it. We need some death, some blood.
They're still going for climate change, so they can make profit off that.
But they need the Michael Bay freaking explosion. They need the so that's Putin, right? And so weirdly, in the space of 2 days, there was an arrest warrant put out for Putin and an arrest warrant put out for Trump, and they're like,
and Imran Khan.
But there you go. So they
had Imran Khan. They got rid of him, and then they started shelling his house, didn't they?
Yeah, but to the same extent though, where there were protesters trying to protect Imran Khan before they went to go and arrest him. Trump has been calling for protesters to go out and protest and get out there, and that could well begin the seeds of a civil war.
Imran Khan, wasn't he taken down lawfully? I mean, America would never dispose of a president or a prime minister. Like some are suggesting Panama, some are suggesting Ecuador, some are suggesting Uruguay, some have suggested in what other countries we've got, various African countries. America wouldn't get involved in that. They don't get involved in these political shenanigans like in Vietnam.
Well, let's wait for the arrest warrant.
or Iraq, or Iran.
They all died of natural causes.
Yeah.
Natural causes on a plane.
Some freedom bombs.
But this is exactly what Ray talked about in the Changing World Order as well, in terms of we are at stage 5, and at stage 5, civil war happens, ready for stage 6, and then for the cycle to all begin once again.
Yeah, because I think no matter what happens, obviously we're pointing at World War III and Trump at the moment. Who knows what they end up blaming it on? Because what will happen is when the currency dissolves, the people in power are going to blame something and someone. And it's the classic divide and conquer thing. And half of people will believe it, the other half won't. And they'll be fighting in the street. Like, there won't be any police. The government won't have any money to pay the police. So they'll just be out and out fighting, and it's going to be kind of nuts. And this is why it's bizarre, but America probably is, arguably one of the safest and best places to live right now because they are the global power. They have the global currency. They bully everyone else. The bulk of the wealth and the resources and the opportunity ends up in America, which is why most of the top 100 companies in the world were based there because they have an unfair advantage over everyone else. But when it falls, the last country you want to be in is America. They're going to really suffer the consequences hard. They're going to go from the top to from hero to zero pretty freaking quick, and it's going to be nasty watching that play out.
And all of this has actually raised the suspicion alarm bells for Mrs. No Show. And Mrs. No Show, who is a non-Bitcoiner, despite my best efforts to Mrs. Neverlook, in terms of like she never wants to talk about Bitcoin, despite my best efforts of orange pilling her. Mrs. Sir Neverlook does not want to get involved whatsoever. However,
she literally never looks.
She never looks. Doesn't care. But she mentioned a couple of things yesterday evening that made me think, yes, you're on the brink now. Yeah, you're starting to change your colours. So it seems like
our own Bitcoin standard.
Yeah, there needs to be a female Bitcoin standard that's like a pamphlet size, easy to read, and some pretty pictures. But ultimately, she said, if you go onto your iPhone, into settings, I'll go onto there now. If you're on your iPhone, settings, general, and settings, notifications, and then at the bottom, extreme alerts. They will both be ticked.
Oh yeah.
And that's because on the 24th of March, there will be a planned extreme alert that will be coming out. So March the 24th. And they're trying to tell you that it is necessary for you to keep those on and to be alarmed so you can be ready for any world events. So anything that's connected to the internet, they are going to let you know. She says, I'm turning them off. Yeah, they lied to me. Yeah, they lied to me during COVID.
And she's accepted the lying.
She's accepted the lying.
Mrs. Evil 10% hasn't. Because we're talking about inflation, she said, COVID's got a lot to answer for. And I just went,
she's accepted the lying. And then she said, and this thing with Donald Trump being arrested, I don't think he should be arrested. Why are they arresting him? And then I said, do you know they're gonna make this thing called a CBDC? I thought, this will shut her up. No, tell me more. And she's now thinking, okay, well, I won't be accepting that because before, granted, she would have walked into it.
Yeah,
I think there is room for the everyday person to now start questioning and using critical thinking around what's going on and to be outside of the system.
Yeah, well, it feeds in great into our next tweet, right?
Yeah.
So we've got John Ratcliffe here saying, am I the only person extremely frightened that Bitcoiners were right all along? I mean, sure, it's nice to be one of the few people who thought ahead and got a life jacket, but what the world is going through is absolutely frightening. Maybe there's a way out of this, but I sure don't see how. If anyone knows how we get out of this, please post in the replies. And by out of it, I mean with the US dollar remaining more or less intact, with inflation more or less under control, and without all the banks collapsing. So you can just see that here, this person is fighting Bitcoin all the way. It's like he's refusing to accept the fact that Bitcoin is the solution because he doesn't even think there's a problem.
Well, he's got in his profile OG Bitcoin hodler.
He's probably just added that. That wasn't there before.
It wasn't there before at all.
I think they need to speak to Saifedean and get that joint Bitcoin standard because it's the only way out.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, though. This is the whole point, right? He gets it. He's getting it now. He's fighting through his, what's it called? The
change
biases.
Biases and sunk cost fallacy. That
yes.
When I hear biases, I always think wokeism. I don't like the word anymore.
Yeah, it's a sunk cost fallacy. He's so ingrained in the fiat system, and he can't accept the fact that it's wrong. But then so much, just like your missus there, so never look, is going, I love the government. I think, well, I don't love them maybe, but I trust them. And then, but slowly but surely, that trust is being eroded, and his trust in the financial system is being eroded such to point he's going, holy shit, Bitcoiners aren't right, are they? Please tell me someone has a solution of logically, how do we get out of this mess? And unfortunately, like if you look through the replies, there's no way out. Yeah, it's like the system has already gone way past where it needed to be. The debt is insanely high. The printing is super high. The amount of government employees.
I also wish we'd stop calling it debt. It's not debt, is it? It's never going to be repaid. It's just nonsense.
Well, it's debt. It's debt if we take it out. It's just not debt if a government or a bank takes it out.
Exactly. It's not debt. Like there's no like audit trail says you've got to pay this back or something. It's literally, we just printed this tenner out of nothing. And what?
Yeah, a debt is something that you do intend, I guess, to pay back, and there's some sort of punishment and detriment not to pay it back. There's none of that. There's no consequences for not paying it back because it's a debt owed to yourself that you continue to spiral out of control.
Even though they say the Fed and the Bank of England aren't part of the government.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother podcast by itself, isn't it?
It's like the classic line, if you owe $100, that's your problem. If you owe $1 billion, that's their problem. And that's where the financial system is, right? If you're a pleb that owes a little bit of money, then you have to pay it. And if you don't, then they will forcibly take it from your earnings. But if it's such a huge amount of money that at no point at any time will you ever earn even 1% of it, then it's whoever you owe the money to's problem because you ain't ever returning it. And that's what the banks and the government's doing. They owe trillions all over the place. And when you add up all the money, it doesn't add up to the debt. So you go, hold on, there's a problem here. How can there be more debt than money? If anyone ever calls us debt in, it's impossible to pay it. This is it. I think this is what is converting people right now. Yeah, you've got quite a lot of quite staunch fiat believers that this latest bank collapse is getting them to really question. And this is the first time that they've really seen. I think we were saying on a couple of podcasts ago, how many canaries in the coal mine need to die before people start to wake up. And I'm looking down the coal mine, and there's about 20 of them dead so far, and everyone's looking down the same mine shaft as me, and I can see 20 dead on the floor, and they're going, coincidence, small countries, small issues, small amount of inflation, it's fine. Yeah, I think now the latest canary that's fallen off is these relatively large banks. Admittedly not a top 10 bank yet, but they're in the top 20. And 5 of them got 5 top 20 banks, all gone in 10 days. And I think this has finally gone, hold on, if this gets any worse, just a couple of more steps, it's over. And finally, these fiat bros and kind of economists and accountants that all believe in it are starting to go, holy shit, maybe my money's not safe in the bank. But the problem is, I don't want to just put it under my mattress. Where do I move it to? And the answer is Bitcoin. And
Well, the answer is Bitcoin, but then some will want to continue to stay in the fiat land and just move it to a bigger bank that they trust. So it will go small bank, bigger bank, bigger bank. Okay, I'm finally better move it out of the system into Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Yeah, I think immediately they're just moving it to a top tier bank.
Yeah,
one of the top 5 banks. They're moving it into that. But then they even know though. They just go, this dominoes that you can't just have 5 banks. If all the ones below it go bust, the other banks can't take on that level of debt. It's just a matter of time till they fall next. And so they're looking ahead to that, going, this does not look safe. And obviously, the economists and accountants of the world are, they are the vanguards. They are the pension funds. They are that's that crowd. Yeah, they're happy with their 3-5% a year, retire at 65, 70, and be happy with it. So they have built up large amounts of wealth. They are getting probably, a lot of them are getting close to retirement age, or they're 10, 20 years away. They've sacrificed hugely to build up this money, but it's sat in bank accounts. It's sat in pension funds. It's sat in vanguards. And they're going, holy shit, these banks are going under. They could steal my lifetime's work. And I have played it as safe as I can. I don't want to retire before 65. And you telling me I'm still going to get wiped out? Fuck that. And it's starting to shit them up. And they should be shit up, because
100%.
as we've been saying on here for 2 years, anything attached to the banking system is going to zero. It might be in 90 days. It might be in 9 years, but it's going to zero.
I think we've got a kind of story which kind of covers this a little bit, because I think the kind of obvious concern of anyone is, well, I can't put all my money in Bitcoin.
Why
and
not?
The next one, well, it's a risk, because what happens if it is all right, and Bitcoin goes down? So it's looking for the risk averse kind of person. My next story is around, well, it's titled "Am I Too Late to Bitcoin?" from Bitcoin Magazine, and it talks around, well, if you've got if you're a US dollar millionaire, so $1, there's no excuse not to buy 0.06 Bitcoin when it's at $20,000 per Bitcoin. So it's shifted slightly, and that is 0.12% allocation for a portfolio of $1 million. Because when the US dollar crashes, that 0.12 will actually be 99.88% of your portfolio. It's that kind of point. It's like you've got no excuse. Literally, what's that? A 20th of a Bitcoin right now is something which could be used to balance your whole portfolio. So think about the way everyone's like, oh, I can't buy Bitcoin. It's like 20 grand. It's too much. But if you just bought 0.1, that put you ahead of the curve, put you well and truly. And 0.1 would be what, £2,300 right now. You could do it by month, because this isn't, well, it's probably not going to happen overnight, I'm guessing. But just put money in. It's having that diversification, that hedge in your portfolio to be safe. And I think this is what a lot of people get through. But they haven't necessarily got to change all their Bitcoin, but it's having an allocation, something which you're happy with.
Yeah. And I think at the moment they said, to be very wealthy in the article, it alludes to the fact that you can have a luxurious upper to middle class lifestyle, and you get that for 800,000 satoshis. I just did a quick calculation there. That is $224. So if you convert $224 into Bitcoin now, you will have an upper class lifestyle on a Bitcoin standard. Insanely cheap. So
insanely cheap.
And obviously that's why, what was it? We did you need $59.
59, yeah.
To be in the top 1% of the population.
Yeah.
And that's probably risen to $65 or something. Let's say 69 for the meme.
I was gonna say you got some meme amounts. You could have 0.420. You could have the 0.69 or the 0.069. But I think just any kind of allocation, it's start looking at it.
It used
Everyone's
to be 6.15 for infinite riches and big titty bitches. But that was
classic phrase. Classic phrase.
That was a 2017 phrase when 6.15 Bitcoin was easily obtainable by nearly everyone because it was £1,000 a coin. But once it went to 20,000 a coin, it was like, okay, this meme 6.15 just doesn't work anymore because you need hundreds of thousands. This isn't obtainable. So the whole meme of infinite riches and big titty bitches, it went away.
Maybe we can bring it back.
Yeah.
That's the title for this pod. Sorted.
I think it ends with even better allocate 1% for 0.5 Bitcoin, so half a Bitcoin. Since stock markets move 1% in a day, you can buy your Bitcoin insurance with just a day's volatility. So anyone who's got a luxurious retirement pot of $1 million, this is what you should be doing. But in reality, Dr. Evil says put 10% in.
Yeah, and
it's interesting, isn't it? Because people were thinking that $1 million was the magic number, in terms of having a retirement. And time has moved on so quickly that 1 million is not 1 million. It's not enough. And you need to, and even having that in a pension is risky as well. So risky to have it in a pension, risky because you've not got enough, risky that $1 million is now no longer $1 million.
The $1 million target, I think, is probably from about the year 2000, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've had a fuckload of inflation. It's like we always bring it up the $100,000 or pounds target salary. You've made it when you're making 100,000 a year. I mean, it's a realization with the US that it's not 100,000, it's 400 grand now. We've had 40 years of inflation on top of the 1980s high flyers on 100 grand. It's 400 grand. We've doubled every 15 years or so. So we've had 100 to 200 to 400,000, and that's actually a figure which you could have and have a luxurious life, be able to retire early, have a top car and big house and so on. It's not 100 grand at all. 100 grand, in the UK, especially if you're around London, you can't afford shit.
Yeah.
One of the guys I always discuss and talk about, and it's his birthday today, Grant Cardone, who made the book 10x, talks about 10x your business, 10x your income, 10x your life. He said a while back that you are broke unless you make $250 a year. And then and I was just like, whoa. But then when he broke it down in terms of, 4K for this, 2K for this, blah, blah for this per year, I was just like, whoa. Yeah, you're right.
He's right. You're not going to realistically retire before then. And then, obviously, in the UK, the extra news we've had recently, which weirdly is 6 months old, but it's on the cap gains tax, right? So imagine, obviously wages have got hit hugely by inflation, but don't worry, you can invest and you can do your buying, selling, do a little bit of trading, buy back a good company. In the UK, you can get 12% profit a year that is tax free, and then above that is 20%. But from next year, which is 10 days, that goes down to 6 grand. And then in next year, it goes down to 3 grand. So it pretty much means now, if you make any profit in your investments, you owe the government 20%. So straight away, they're just cutting people off at the knees. And this is what I was saying, how quickly the rules can change. This is not little tiny changes. This is obviously not even including inflation, right? So the 12 grand was not worth 12 grand 20 years ago anyway. The 12 grand probably was worth the spending power of 50 today. And so not only is it not gone up to 50 to continue with inflation, they are halving it twice. down to 3, which pretty much by the time it's 3,
it makes no sense, does it?
They just want to. They're bankrupt, right? It makes sense once you realize they're bankrupt and they need all the money.
They do this, and I was saying, well, you got to make sure all your investments are in an ISA now.
Yeah.
But then it's like, how long till the ISA gets done? I mean,
and that has a limit of 20 grand a year as well.
Yeah, but it's going to be. Is it going to be? Well, actually, it's not. You don't get charged on ISA. It'll be. You only get 5%. You only get 10%. You only get 20, and then it's just like, oh, fuck it. You no longer having it anymore. And it's like, how long till that's stripped away? It's like you said, they're broke, and it's like, how long till they start doing that? And then how long after that is the haircut?
And how long after that is the pension squeeze? At the moment, it's on the way out, you get taxed 20%. How long to it's 40, to it's 60?
This is 80. It, because I calculated a modest retirement, and it's by the time which I'm 65, but the income coming out of my pension has to be 100 grand or something to support my lifestyle if I wanted a lifestyle on 25 to 30.
Well, you're never going to retire if you can work it out based on inflation. Unless you move to a liquid standard.
Yeah, but this was just, trying to come up with a feasible way of modelling it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, the fact is that the stuff coming out of your pension investments will be over 100 grand anyway. So you'll be in a higher tax band. You'll be in the 40%. And then at some point it'll go over the, 125, which is 50%?
40%, yeah, and then 150, 50%.
That's come down from this year.
They took it down
to 125.
Oh, yes.
So not only have they not gone up with inflation, they've gone down to meet it at 125 instead of 150.
And like we said, the 100 grand is no longer the magic figure and hasn't been since the 80s. It's 400 grand now. So it's just, you're exactly right. They're bankrupt.
Yeah, and they're grabbing at every single penny they can, and the pension pot will be the last pot they grab, but they're grabbing it on the way down. They'll take it.
And in the UK, you got the NHS, so remove the NHS, but they'll still want the national insurance contributions.
It's nuts. But our next story here is a nice little bit of an anecdote, so it's a little bit of a throwback because this
it's a light relief, isn't it? Because we said we wouldn't talk about it.
This was on it's on last week's agenda, but I left it on just because it's so funny to see what a difference a week makes, right? So this guy tweeted this on March 9th. He went, I think Bitcoin adoption's been set back 5 years after the X and Silvergate. Public hates it. Institutions won't touch it. The halvening pump isn't coming this time in the lead up to a recession. Agree, disagree. You go, wow. You tweeted this on March 9th. It's 11 days later. Another 4 banks have gone under. Bitcoin's pumped about 50%. So you go, so in reality, all we need to do with this story, it's like a fine wine. Just let it age. And you just go, there we go. Proven wrong. FTX means bollocks. FTX is not connected to Bitcoin. Good luck associating with it for long because it's just a meme. It's FTX has nothing.
I don't think there's a connection in the general public anymore about FTX. At first there was, but then there's a realization it's pretty much Bernie Madoff 2.0. And then thrown here that he's put the halvening. I think that should be the new title for the halving. The halvening. I quite like that. And then someone said, shocking, it's a halving. Keep up, Joe.
Yeah, you're right. I do think people have actually started to begin to wise up around what is Bitcoin, what is shitcoins and crypto. And FTX certainly did that. Unfortunately, Joe was still on the I didn't get the memo, and this is still crypto, and kind of put everything into one whole basket because Bitcoin has moved on, bro. Like, as you said, we're nearly 40 to 50% up since the last 2 weeks in terms of everything that's gone on. So, we're riding high right now. And it only feels like it feels good, but we're nowhere near previous all-time highs. What are we going to be like when we reach new all-time highs? The toxicity that's going to be out there is unbelievable. The I told you so's, the fuck yous are going to be so harsh. It's going to be unbelievable.
Yeah, but this is the thing, though, right? I always say it: you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. And,
Yeah.
and if you think Bitcoin is attached to FTX and Silvergate, I think they've mentioned Silvergate because they were a crypto fund. So I think Silvergate were the first to go. So I think on March 9th, there's only Silvergate had gone. And I don't think Silicon Valley Bank and the other one, First Republic or something, I can't remember.
No, there was
Sovereign
Silvergate,
Sovereign.
there was Sovereign Bank, that's right.
Yeah,
Three S's.
So I think those two hadn't quite gone yet. So just the Silvergate one. So he was going, oh, with FTX, and now even the bank that is a crypto one. Now that those two are gone, it's just like Bitcoin is just such
Well, it sounds like this
poison chalice.
So reading this guy, so his profile's got commercial litigator supporting Bitcoin, poker co-host inside Bitcoin, life is on a wire, arrest just waiting, not legal financial advice. So I'm like, was it generally not just him putting what someone said?
Yeah, well, I think he is saying this is a hedge fund, agree, disagree. So maybe these aren't Joe's words necessarily, but so he probably was putting it out there to provoke and get engagement, and it kind of worked. But if we just assume it is a genuine quote, it's from a hedge fund guy. And I do think, with my family and friends, they did link Bitcoin and FTX together. FTX was the one story that really did capture their imagination and was mainstream enough for them to hear about it. And they don't get much of a Bitcoin news in their feeds. So the bit that really did get through was FTX has gone down, and they didn't really know what FTX is. They just think, oh, that's bad for Bitcoin, right? So I think to a certain degree, he's got a little bit of a point. But really, these people are not really going to ever influence the market. They don't probably have a huge amount of money, and they're going to be the laggards. They're going to be last on board the life raft. So
they won't have a spot next to you.
No. But for a hedge fund manager to be saying this, well, he's qualified now in this area and he's still saying it. So he's just, it's a bit shocking, but he'd already been proven wrong. And I'd imagine if you ask him again, he'd probably change his mind.
Okay. It's nice that you tagged your own tweet again this week.
Is it the response to this? Yeah.
Yeah. So you wrote 2009 Bitcoin is magic internet money. 2013 Bitcoin is too hard to use. 2017 blockchain not Bitcoin. 2021 NFTs though. 2023 FTX damaged Bitcoin. You get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. Stack will be left behind.
Yeah. I tweeted that. I think Bitcoin was about 15K and now it's 23K in pounds.
Yeah. But I feel you forgot.
I will say, I don't know how he fucking does it, because he does it in fantasy football and he does it in Bitcoin as well. But you mentioned, and I loved it as well, because we talked about not necessarily listening back to recordings, but you talked about the whole moving of money from the US bank into Bitcoin and obviously utilizing Kraken. But Mr. All-In once again played a blinder by doing so. And last week, or not Friday just gone, but the Friday beforehand, and then once again, there's been a pump. It's like he knows and he goes before it actually happens, ready. And he's done it once again. So do you want to explain your methodology of how you've been able to do it once again before the time?
It's the canaries in the coal mine. You can't wait until you start feeling ill and you're about to collapse. You've got to run out before, right? You've got to look for the signs. So when I saw 3 US banks going under on that Friday, with me having a relatively like large amount of money stuck in a US bank, I just went and I was talking to the missus about it and just went, if I lose that amount of money in a US bank, I'm even though it's not materially going to impact my life, I'm gonna kick myself forever for it because I knew this was fucking coming and I didn't do it. And I think this is it. This is fucking it. They're going under now. So I pulled it all out and got it into Bitcoin over the weekend. And guess what? Like the same alarm bells that I saw, other people see. They just take longer to react. They need,
but like I pointed out,
they want to. And some people need 5 banks. Some need 15 banks. Some need 20 banks. Some need them all to go down before they believe it. And I need one. I need one relatively big US bank to go under. And I shit myself and went, what am I keeping a year's worth of money in a US bank for? Just because it gives me 3% interest. Fuck that. I'm risking 100% for 3%. Get into Bitcoin. And literally in the 2 weeks, I've made 50% of my money. I'm like, why didn't I? Like, beautiful timing. Now I could put it all back and probably I wouldn't. Yeah. But I could call it a great trade. But I'm like, why would I ever put it back in at the beginning of hyper Bitcoinization? This is it.
We did discuss this over the uptick has been caused by you moving your vast amounts of money. The second one's a question. Which American bank did you have money in?
It's Marcus, which is owned by
Goldman
Sachs.
Goldman Sachs, yeah.
So it was one of the big ones, but I wasn't sure whether Marcus was like a subsidiary or something. I don't know if they would let Marcus die.
I think it's just a financial product.
Oh, okay.
It's a digital bank of, as I say, Goldman Sachs, because I remember I've got a cheeky quid in Goldman Sachs. Because I literally, in the account, because I wanted to go through the KYC process and sign up. And so I was just like, oh yeah, do that. Boom, see what it's all like.
You love spreading your private information everywhere.
Yeah. But you're right, they were one of the better ones with regards to interest rates.
I'm just going to say about your tweet, I feel you missed out some important information, that you haven't got a bit about boiling the oceans and the fact that Bitcoin is racist.
Yeah. I guess like obviously every year there's various FUD, but I just think they're the main reasons not to buy Bitcoin. And so each time, each kind of wave, you have a reason not to do it. It's like it's too risky, it's too hard. Our blockchain's better, NFTs are better, and now it's FTX. FTX has killed Bitcoin, right? And you just go, all these reasons were wrong, and if you didn't buy, every single one of these reasons cost you multiples of your like net worth right now. So we're not talking about a couple of percent here and there. We're talking about thousands of percent. Whatever you're worth right now, you could be worth 10, 20 to 200x your money now. And but yeah, you get, like I said at the end, you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. Tweeted that out on March 9th. If you listen to that tweet, you'd be at 50% now. So there you go. Free financial advice.
Because we've already discussed it earlier on, so it'll be June 17th.
Yeah,
which would be the 90 days. Should we have a little bit of a countdown clock, and just as a reminder to come back to Pod 91 where we covered it? Because anyhow, Bitcoin gets to 1 million a coin. Wow.
Yeah, I genuinely think all he's trying to do here is start the bull run properly, because we've got the disaster in the banking system. What you want to do is start the fuse on the Bitcoin price. And even if it only goes to 200K, he'll be like, I'm wrong. But him paying out $2 million worth of bets, I can guarantee it's going to be nothing based on his net worth. It'll be a tiny sliver. So I think it's quite a clever marketing game. And hey, I'm all for it. To be honest, I don't want to go up too fast, because I just don't. I can't be arsed with the big pullbacks again. They do hurt. So I'd rather just go up slow and steady, where it's more
But I
sustainable.
was going to say, when you basically retired, you retired when Bitcoin was a lot less anyway. So it won't really affect you too much because you're a few cycles in.
Mm.
Whereas I think, with myself and Sir Neville got to a position to say, give up work, and then we had a big pullback, it would, basically kill us and we'd have to beg for our jobs back.
I was rash. Please don't take it in my resignation.
Both of us said things which we now regret.
Yeah, mainly me. Those Glassdoor comments that weren't anonymous. That was me.
I promise I only watch trannies on Pornhub. That's all I watch. Chicks with dicks. Please let me back. I'm Mr. Well, that's not quite what we're looking for.
But anyway, swiftly moving on.
Swiftly moving on before we get cancelled again.
So another one from Bitcoin Magazine. Biden, the Biden administration's proposed a 30% tax on electricity used for Bitcoin and crypto mining. So obviously it's just a proposal. It's just thinking. It's not set in stone, but it's just kind of like throwing that in there. But
what's his reasoning? Read out his reasoning.
It's hindering the transition to a low emission energy future, the White House says.
Fucking lol.
So I think we covered this a number of times, but kind of to dig into it. Bitcoin is, over 50 or 60% renewable energy right now. And it's predicted to go by, I think it's 2025, into being carbon negative. And that's because it uses sources such as gas flares and other wasted energy in order to mine. So obviously you can't ban something when it's actually making a positive for the environment. So it's a kind of a bit of a nuts statement. But, as we all know, it's hiding behind something to try and destroy Bitcoin and discredit it. So you kind of got to think the population's spread into its own interests. And so you're going to have this little segment over here who like eating soy, drinking soy lattes, and getting pegged. And those are the kind of people who will not buy Bitcoin because they see it as being environmentally problematic. But for them, I'd say, well, what I've just said, but then throw in the fact that adopting a Bitcoin standard and not having your money inflate away from you, people will be less of a consumer, buy less plastic, and actually just want to live their life for being part of their family. Less waste, less arsing around, wasting energy, wasting resources, buying disposable fashion.
Yeah. And the problem is, like, even if Bitcoin did take a huge amount of energy, using energy is not necessarily a negative thing. You use energy to get out of bed. You use energy to go for a run. Like, when something adds value to the world, it's going to use energy.
You mean like making Sports Direct mugs?
Do attack Sports Direct mugs. That's my favorite mug. It's a big boy. But it's just bizarre why there's a war on energy right now. Yeah, where anything that uses energy, and obviously it's all, again, the hypocrisy of it all. The people telling us not to use energy fly around in their private jets. They clearly don't give a shit about how much energy is used.
Oh, yeah. Like, you got to think Biden, when he went to COP 25 or 26, he flew there in $1 billion jet to transport his $1 million car, which spent tens of thousands on fuel because it's so heavy. And then he have 7-course meals. And he slept for half the conference because he's a geriatric. So you kind of go, and it's also, how do you have time to talk about something which is so small to you, which shouldn't be a threat, when you're in the middle of arming Ukraine all the time? You've got hunger within your country. You've got mass immigration, people hopping over border, stretching the services within US. And also you're in the midst of making sure that Pakistan has a gender studies program.
And the problem is, right, even if, like, let's just say Bitcoin did boil the oceans, if it became the global standard. Let's just go with that argument. Well, do you want to be in a world where the oceans are boiling and have no money, or do you want Bitcoin? It's still not an excuse to not buy Bitcoin, because even if it is bad for the environment, which it isn't, which bizarrely, even though Bitcoin doesn't give a fuck about that, all it cares about is security and sound money. It just so happens that by mining Bitcoin, energy costs money. So mining is moved to the lowest cost energy, which ends up being waste energy or completely renewables. So that's completely coincidental. We don't give a fuck about all these dumbass FUD articles. We haven't moved our mining to renewables and to waste energy because they've told us to. It's just the best place to put it. It's just a coincidence that Bitcoin ends up being super low carbon emission. But even if it wasn't, are you honestly going to virtue signal to such an extent to go, I refuse Bitcoin because it's bad for the environment, and sit there and watch your net worth go to zero? To be honest, if someone was willing to do that, at least I'd admire them for standing by their principles and going, no, fuck that. I care about the pandas. I'm happy to lose all my money and not convert it to Bitcoin as a protest. And I would clap them from my yacht and just go, congratulations, you didn't save the pandas, but you tried. And they have nothing, right? So it doesn't make any sense. Even if you believe it, even if you believe the environmental FUD, you go, but if Bitcoin wins, you completely lose on the other side. The US dollars or the pounds or basically all of fiat loses to such a degree. This is a really good test of how much you give a shit about this environmental issue, because we all know that a lot of this is posturing, a lot of it's alarmism. They've always predicted the end of the planet. Oh, it's just 15 years out.
It's a giant distraction.
I was going to say, do you think it's more of a springboard for them to then just get into a new role and again have that voice being heard and kind of self-fulfilling prophecy of I'm the big I am?
Well, the environmental thing's been forever, hasn't it? Like, you can go back to the 80s. Like, I think we discussed it on one of the freaking very early pods. We had ozone layer, acid rain, ice caps melting.
Have you ever read about when they stopped using paper bags and put plastics in? Basically have admitted that it was down to the plastic producers looking for further profit, so they bribed all the government officials.
Oh, what? To convert from what, paper to plastic?
Yeah, paper bags to plastic bags. And now we're going the other way, aren't we? Either paper bags or reusables. So there's that big period when we were using plastic bags all the time, and it's basically down to the fact that, the plastic companies had lobbied to
make it worth a bribe. Anyway, let's move to Guatemala.
Yeah.
It sounds like a nothing.
It's probably nothing. So
Bitcoin in Guatemala from the Bitcoin magazine. As always, everybody that follows the show, any of the links and the stories that we talk about are in the show notes. But lessons from my months as a Bitcoin volunteer within Guatemala's groundbreaking project. So there's a project going on currently which is aimed at Bitcoin-friendly companies, and essentially those companies, one located in Guatemala, aims to create a circular economy powered by Bitcoin, providing a novel and accessible solution for the unbanked as well as banked individuals. So approximately 60% of the adult population doesn't have access to formal financial services. But with this project, which is the Bitcoin Lake project, that solves that and ultimately gives people the ability to trade and exchange cash amongst one another.
Yeah, looks like another El Salvador, right? Just it's more of a grassroots kind of.
It sounds like it's just starting in a small place with lots of education ongoing to make people understand about Bitcoin, finance, etc. So it sounds interesting, and getting all the merchants on Lightning, from my understanding. But I think these kind of case studies, it's better than what we've got. But I think, we've talked about it, that Lightning needs to improve. We need to have a couple of improvements in place to get this really to go full scale.
Yeah, but already, even now, right? So just as I said, like, why do miners use renewable or waste energy? It's not to save the planet. It's because it's the most sensible thing to do. It's just use the business
and cost efficient. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just the basic economics. You try and lower your costs as best as possible, and it's why are some of the small merchants using Bitcoin in Guatemala? It's like, well, at the moment, credit card payments they're costly and they're slow. Whereas if they use Bitcoin, it's instant and it's cheaper because they can use Lightning.
And also they don't have bank accounts as well. Yeah. What is it, 60% or is it 40%?
Yeah, 60%. Yeah, don't have access. Yeah. So you literally in increasing your customer base from 40% to 100% if you accept Bitcoin instead, because no one is blocked from Bitcoin. So
and the stat is that more people in the world have a mobile phone than a toothbrush.
Yeah,
crazy.
And so there's admittedly, like the volume in 2022 was 7.39 Bitcoin. So that's the whole of Bitcoin Lake. So it's small. It is small at the moment. As an overall GDP of Guatemala, it's still not even registering on the pie chart. But these things start from somewhere, and you can see these grassroots kind of things. And I much prefer this starting from the bottom and having it spread out, as opposed to an El Salvador one, which is kind of government forced and then pushed down to people. I think it works much better when you just let people just have it and then play and go, look, if Bitcoin is not better for you, don't use it. Bitcoin needs to beat fiat on a case-by-case basis, and it should not have a government going, you have to accept Bitcoin or you have to use it in any shape or form. That is so anti-Bitcoin, it's unreal. And
I think when it's done like that, it's a lot more natural, and equally, I think it becomes a little bit more ingrained into people's psyche to want to use it, as opposed to being forced to use it. So, I definitely think that it is probably the best model and the right model moving forward with nations.
If anything, I want the governments to be actively against Bitcoin.
And
then the people that come on board are proper Bitcoiners. No one's been strong-armed into this. Like when you look at the European and American Bitcoiners, they're really good Bitcoiners because they've had to switch off from everything their government has said about Bitcoin. Whereas if you probably go to El Salvador, you've got quite a few people there that have been forced to accept Bitcoin. And even though their business accepts Bitcoin, probably if you ask them about it or say, do they believe in it or what is it, they might not really know, even though they've been forced to accept it, which isn't a great place. Whereas in the Western countries where the economies and the currencies are relatively stable at the moment, seemingly we're right on the edge of a collapse, to look at a Bitcoiner there, you go, oh, they're a proper Bitcoiner, because they have been lied to. The propaganda that's coming down their way about fiat, it is so strong that fiat is great and so strong that Bitcoin is bad, and for so many reasons. If you become a Bitcoin maxi through all that, you've kind of really earned your stripes there. So yeah, I prefer governments to be hostile as opposed to supportive, because I think it breeds better Bitcoiners. We want to say for Dean.
Let's do it. Safe is dropping a new book. Now, we are massive advocates for the Bitcoin Standard as being the #1 Bitcoin book that all Bitcoiners should read, or non-Bitcoiners read, in order to get into Bitcoin. And of course, there are other versions of Saifedean's Bitcoin Standard book, namely that of Bitcoin Lessons. if you were to download that onto your app and then work through exactly what Bitcoin is and the relevancy of it. Saifedean then went on to produce the Fiat Standard as well. So a book that I actually started reading, but other things kind of got in the way, but it is definitely still on the reading list. But the third installment is Economics and the Principles of Economics, brought to you by Saifedean Ammous. Naturally, it'll be in the same vein as the Bitcoin Standard in terms of talking about the background and the concept of what economics is, and then how it's applied in terms of the various different schools of thought. And ultimately, it will leave you with the conclusion as to how to interpret economics in today's society and climate. So one definitely to look forward to.
Yeah, I think it seems to be largely Austrian economics, which is decent because I went through Saifedean's Austrian economics course on Michael Saylor's website. Was it hope.com, I think?
Yeah, hope.com.
And I did find it a little bit long-winded and stuff. So I think the book will be good because, again, I think always hearing about the Bitcoin standard, then the fiat standard, then just the general principles of economics. He can talk on these things for dozens of hours, and it's all great stuff. But sometimes you do walk away going, God, there's so much in my head, and it's hard to just kind of land some key ideas. But when you challenge him to go, look, put it into a book that I can read in like 5 or 6 hours, he nails it every time. So I think
the Fiat Standard was a fun book, albeit I think he tried to claim he was going to be impartial.
Oh, yes.
But it just turned into typical Saifedean being very acidic about fiat use. I expect this is exactly the same. So talk about the standard principles which are put through, and no doubt he'll be talking about his best friend Keynes. I think he refers to him as a paedophile quite often. And he'll bound to be making mention. I was thinking, I said to Son, have a look. I don't know, but I'm thinking it's on my pile. It's just not one of my immediate books which I'll read.
Have you read much or listened to much about Austrian economics though?
Yes, I've read one of the main texts which people cite. I think it's called something like the Basics of Economics. It's basically Austrian economics. It's a bloody long book as well. And then I read it's something along the lines of a short lesson in economics as well. So
yeah, that's fair enough. I think if you have read around Austrian economics, then you're probably okay. And I think I have to a certain degree, and I've been through his course, but I might buy it just to give myself.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I've got other priorities and what I want to read to understand, but it's definitely on my list of things which I want to go through. Economics and one lesson is what I read, and that is mainly Austrian economics, but then it tries to toe the line at one point around inflation. I'm just kind of going, this doesn't fit in with the rest of what you've been saying. And then the Basic Economics, fifth edition by Robert Sewell. That's like one of the main textbooks which people go on about, but it is a beast.
Yeah.
So I think we'll all be reading that. It's just at what point. And I noticed that if you pay $250, you can get an exclusive signed hardcover and giftable annual membership to Saifedean.com. The Saifedean membership gives you access to all 5 of Saifedean's online courses, including Principles of Economics 1, 2, the Bitcoin Standard, Fiat Standard, and Hard Questions on Money. So, yeah, not something which I'll get because I just couldn't bring myself to spend $250, even though I do love Saifedean.
Yeah, that's a bit. Yeah, it's a bit of cash, but I think pick the book up, add it to collection. It's a nice little trilogy. It'll look nice on the shelf on it.
That's all I was thinking. It's the trilogy, the holy trinity of all 3 books of the Fiat Standard, the Bitcoin Standard, and then the Principles of Economics.
Yeah, like we've been discussing, the one thing that I doubt anyone listening is going to probably know, but it's just anyone knows a decent book about just the fall of empires that really just dictates specifically around money and just almost why empires grew so big and why they fall. I think that's a topic all three of us just really want to just delve into more, because I think we've all got bits and pieces. But I think what's probably so great about Seyfriedin's work is it ignited our interest of history, because he went through the history of money. But still, it's probably, what is it, 150 pages, the entire thing, and say like 70 of them were about the history. I need more. It's just such, it just touches the surface. I want 700 pages on.
It's almost, it's a similarities, in human behavior and monetary policy. And it's looking across all these different times. So you've got the Roman Empire, which we often cite. You've got the Chinese Empire, both massive empires which collapsed due to overexpansion and ultimately going on to a fiat standard in one way or another. Then there's the British Empire, covering all those different things. And it's just, I think Ray Dalio touched upon it a little bit, but he seemed to hide a little bit as well. Like he hid some of the bits which I felt that he wasn't allowed to say.
Yeah.
Well, as we go through our levels of, again, novice, competent, proficient, expert, and master,
I'm going for proficient
essentially want blow by blow an understanding of the money cycle, and we want to understand how they get there and obviously how they fall. And one of the books which I think may cover that, which I began just on Audible, is by Adam Ferguson, which is called When Money Dies, and then it goes into hyperinflation. So that may be one that addresses what we're looking for, and then also caters for what is potentially happening now. But, we are fully aware that every currency goes to zero. And most currencies only last around about, on average, 50 years. So the US dollar and the UK pound are the anomalies to this, but essentially they are no different, and they will eventually go to zero. Yeah. And we're pretty confident that they're unfortunately going to go to zero, or fortunately, depending on how you feel in our lifetimes.
It's only happened every time.
Yeah.
This time it's different.
Yeah,
This time it's different because we've got climate change. Greta Thunberg, who I read a really weird thread on Twitter actually talking about her, that her mother is on the same board as someone who's on the WEF, and there's basically all these interlinked timelines. I'm like, I don't know how true it is because I didn't have time to actually fact check any of it.
Yeah, her whole background is extremely sus. I've read similar articles about her where I can't remember when she first came to fame, but I think she got arrested.
When she was about 13, about 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, and she got arrested for some type of protest or something she was doing, and it was amazing how fast books, articles, documentaries all about her just came out within weeks.
And then also she got arrested in Germany. And then for some reason there were pictures of her posing with the police after they arrested her.
Well, they're the recent ones, yeah. But it's just almost her origin story just looks super sus. It's like she was almost primed to be the young face of climate change. They didn't want some old crusty gammon politician going, oh, climate change. It's like, how do we get the kids involved? And they picked this little autistic 13-year-old kid
who was sitting on like an $8,000 chair.
Yeah.
And when she's in her first interview, and people are like, look at the furniture here, it's worth this much. This is the shots where you get it from.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. Anyway, should we skip to Jerome Powell?
JP. J Powell.
The old JP, the owner of the Brr meme.
I'm trying to find it in the actual... Lost my place. So it's Inflation Weekly.
Ooh,
is that where you go like that?
Should I put it in? Just played it. And
I think these are the key points specifically of like when we'll come back and look back historically of, Pod 91, the small key bombs of, wow, remember that phrase, but from Jay Powell, that we'll think, yeah, that
the
was
J-Dog.
significant. The J-Dog himself.
So this is a nice little video, which Mr. Orlin, as usual, put in, which I think I did see bouncing around Twitter. So it's he's asked, why does inflation help people and why specifically 2%? And his basic explanation was it's globally agreed.
Yeah, I'll play the video now.
For the general public, for those working families of people, why 2%? Why is getting it to 2% so important?
So that has become the globally agreed, essentially all major central banks target 2% inflation in one form or another.
How does that help my Nevada families? How does that help people in Nevada?
I'll tell you how it does. And it's I guess it's obviously not, it's not obvious how that is, but 2% inflation, to have people believe that inflation is going to go back to 2% really anchors inflation there, because the evidence is and the modern belief is that people's expectations about inflation actually have an effect on inflation. If you expect inflation to go up 5%, then it will. If everyone kind of expects that, because that's what businesses and households will be expecting, and it'll kind of happen because they expect it. So having a 2% inflation goal which we had for many years.
It's really worrying, right? It's really worrying.
But it's the fact that it's globally agreed, but it was globally agreed.
globally agreed by who and why? And
well,
the
it was globally agreed as
how,
part of the.
How does it benefit the average household?
Was?
Well, it's obviously this. Well, it's not obvious, but basically, inflation is whatever you say it is. If you say it's 5%, inflation goes to 5%. If you say it's 2%, it goes. You just go, Jerome. Do you realize what inflation is? Inflation is the increase of this monetary supply, which you, as your job title, control. So if you say 5%, it doesn't just go to 5% magically. It means you pressed a fucking button that pushed 5% more money out of the money printer. If you pressed in 50%, then 50% more money came out of the money printer. It doesn't magically fucking go anywhere, Jerome.
But it's also what I think's missed is why 2%, and it's like, if you think what else is at 2%?
Your penis size,
the gold increase.
Bingo. So it's a gold increase. I mean, basically, so we could get double spend. So we went, gold increases by 2%. Our money's going to increase by 2%. And we're going to move on to this. And it'll be sound because we're America with a global superpower. And they were, at the same time, they'd spent all the gold and they just went, this replaces it. And it's super because it's backed by us. You don't have to bother mining the gold. And I think everyone forgets that. That's why it's a figure of 2%. But they do want to increase it to 4%, don't they? Because we're so broke.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why. The question is a very good one, right? Because in reality, there is no reason why it's 2. The only reason it's 2 really is because it's a small enough number that they hope people don't notice too badly.
Exactly.
That's exactly
what I was going to say. It's an arbitrary number, which you think, it's 2%. I can swallow 2%.
Yeah,
and you do swallow 2%. But then when you swallow 2% year after year after year, but then really it's not 2%, it's a lot more like double figures. And funnily enough, just again before the pod, I saw an email where the £67 that the government were previously giving to all households for gas and electric in terms of a subsidy cost will be removed in April. You think, oh, okay, it's only £67, but okay, that's being removed. But it's also being removed given the fact that my bill has now doubled from what it was. So that is going to be quite a lot.
The thing is, right, if this was a 2% tax instead, people would fight it now. Because it's just one of them where, if you've got your 100 grand life savings in the bank, and if every year you went in and 2 grand was missing, people would be up in arms, really annoyed about this type of thing. But because it's just a hidden stealth tax, which just means, oh no, your 100 grand is still there, but it has the spending power of 98, then the spending power of 96, and it just keeps falling, and every 15 years it halves. It's just genius, and the only reason they get away with it.
The whole thing is just absolutely ridiculous. You think, we've gone through how much tax you pay. So if you're in a 40% band, you're probably paying about 50% in total, because you've got the direct taxes, you've got the indirect, and everything you buy is literally riddled with 50% tax. So the actual end product you're paying for is 50%, but you're already being taxed 50%. Therefore, it's only really effective for 25% of your salary. And it's just, you think about that, and it's absolutely mind-blowing that they're taking most of the money anyway, and then they are also doing inflation on top, and they aren't happy with that. So they're also begging for your bonds and getting all money managers to have bonds in their portfolios.
Yeah. And the most shocking thing about this is Jerome Powell, right? He is the head of the Fed. How does he not have a better answer for why 2% inflation is a thing? You're on mute.
Just doesn't care.
It's never like we're talking then, but he's on mute.
Yeah, I was going to say, and correct. How does he not think about that? And then, think, I will be asked that question. I need to have a decent answer to that question.
What is the decent? Oh, why 2%? Because it stimulates a global economy, and it's proven over these years, as you can see, has expanded. We know that's a pile of shit, because I read this.
No, but at least that's at least that's better. At least that's a little bit plausible.
I suppose 80% of people would accept what I just said.
Yeah, exactly. It stimulates the economy. It allows economic growth. We wouldn't have the internet. We wouldn't have planes. Just start lying. Just fucking have an answer.
I read believing.
It was literally like, it was his first day in the job, and he was like, "Why do you have 2% inflation, and why does the average household benefit from that?" And he just rabbit in headlights. He just went, "Fuck, I don't know. I'm just going to start talking and hope I find an answer along the way." And he doesn't.
I read this Twitter thread earlier, and it's talking about people keep on going about medieval times and why it's better than now, but people were really poor in medieval times. And one of the arguments which she used was GDP. And I was just like, and it just basically goes like that. And it goes, boom! And it's like when it hits the 1940s, when the monetary supplies get loosened. And it's just like, you do realise that's because they started printing a shitload of money. That is why so you can't, everything else which you argued with, you can use. But GDP, my God, you are stupid.
Yeah. They printed double the money. GDP also doubled. Yeah, did it though?
It's like, it
literally didn't.
Yes, we're not in recession because the GDP increased by 0.5%. And we know that you printed 10% in the last year. So we're actually minus 9.5.
Yeah. Well, anyone that thinks that the fucking economy grew with 2 years of locking down the same economy, yet somehow we came out of a lockdown economy and doubled the size of that luscious economy. Come on, no one can believe this.
People do.
Yeah. And then so it's like Batman and Robin tonight on Inflation Weekly, because we have Jerome first, hot on his heels, Janet Yellen gets asked the question, right? I'm not even sure who asked the question, but it's a great question, right? He basically just goes, so we've got the FDIC insurance, otherwise known as FDIC. I have to refer it to as FDIC forever now. Ever since what's it, AP?
Yes.
Awaken with AP. So FDIC
so
insurance,
funny, by the way.
so FDIC insurance in America, I actually didn't know this. I thought it was 100K, but it goes to 250K, right? But as has been proven over the last 5 bank collapses, many companies and people had way more than 250K in these banks, and they went bust. And yet the insurance, not only did it not need to even be paid out, because they didn't even need to call on it, the governments bailed out no matter how big your deposit was. and I think some people had up to 100 million in these accounts. They all got 100% of their deposits back, completely bailed out. So this governor goes to Janet Yellen, is FDIC insurance actually infinite? Because it's supposed to be 250K. We've had 5 banks go under, and 100% of deposits are actually insured because they all got their money back. So it looks like all deposits also infinitely covered.
And it's also, he pointed out that only big banks have the FDIC insurance as well, so the smaller ones don't typically. I think.
No, I think most of them do. To be fair, yeah. I think
she's talking about like state banks.
Yeah. Actually, I'll play the clip now.
Let me start with some of the banking issues we're dealing with on it. Will the deposits in every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of their size, be fully insured now? Are they fully recovered? Every bank, every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of the size of the deposit, will they get the same treatment that SVBP just got or Signature Bank just got?
A bank only gets that treatment if a majority of the FDIC board, a supermajority of the Fed board, and I, in consultation with the president, determine that the failure to protect uninsured depositors would create systemic risk and significant economic and financial consequences.
So what is your plan?
We made that determination.
Right. So what is your plan to keep large depositors from moving their funds out of community banks into the big banks? We have seen the mergers of banks over the past decade. I'm concerned you're about to accelerate that by encouraging anyone who has a large deposit in a community bank to say, we're not going to make you whole, but if you go to one of our preferred banks, we will make you whole at that point.
Look, I mean, that's certainly not something that we're encouraging.
That is happening right now.
That is happening because depositors are concerned about the bank failures that have happened and whether or not other banks could also
No,
fail.
it's happening
And
because you're fully insured no matter what the amount is. If you're in a big bank, you're not fully insured if you're in a community bank.
Well, you're not fully insured. And
you were at Signature, and it just barely met that threshold. You were at Signature.
Well,
But yeah, I think what his point is he's going because her reply to his point is the FDIC insurance absolutely does not apply to infinite deposits. We will only bail out a bank if it poses systemic risk to the financial system. So he goes.
The whole board has got to, the board and all these people have got to agree, but it does as well.
Yeah, but all that basically means that's why the small banks essentially now don't have infinite FDIC insurance because they may not pose a systemic risk. Whereas if you are a big bank, you do pose a systemic risk. Therefore, you have infinite deposit insurance. So what they are indirectly doing is forcing everyone, if you are competent and have over 250K worth of money, you have to move that to a big bank because you have to move it to a bank that if it went bust would pose systemic risk to the financial system. If it's in a small bank, it might not be, and they'll let it go bust and you'll lose your money. So all they are doing by doing this is forcing everyone to move their money from the small banks, the medium banks into the big banks, because otherwise you haven't got FDIC insurance.
Yeah, so I think he asked her about it, and there's this big pause from Yellen before she used a really thick New York accent and said, of course, if a systemic risk, but is that big pause where it's just like, no. And it's like, we know you're bullshitting.
Yeah. For me, it just exposes these people like Jerome and Janet. They're fucking puppets. There's no way. They are not in this. They're not living and breathing it. Like, she genuinely didn't realize what this meant. And like, we all got this. Like last week, we saw this come in. Like we even
I was going to say, I think we did cover it last week in terms of, not only was the FDIC insurance up to 250k, but it was, those companies that had more than that were reimbursed and made whole again over and above the 250k. Where did that money come from? There is no magic pot that made them whole again over and above the 250k that they were entitled to. And it seemed to be okay, but that's not the case.
Yeah. And she seems totally blindsided when she gets
Correct.
told that, like, have you worked out the game theory of this? By saying that you only bail out a bank when it poses systemic risk, it basically means you have to hold your money in a top 5 bank. And if you don't, then you run the risk of losing everything. And when confronted with that, she could just see it. Like, the cogs were turning. She's like, holy fuck, he's right. How do I get out of this without admitting that he's right? This is the first time this has ever been posed to me. And you go, you're the head of the Treasury for the US. This is your bread and butter, like the most basic game theory ever. And again, she isn't prepped, doesn't understand the question.
Well, yeah, but she's always cited as being like a renowned economist, but she's been on this high inflation, low interest for the last 15 years, which was always going to cause catastrophe. She denied that 2008 was going to happen, literally the couple of weeks before it happened. She's, like you said, she's a puppet. The people who actually recognize that all this is happening don't get these jobs. The people who speak out are just like, we don't want them. So she's literally a moron compared to the people who should be in these positions.
Yeah, she's like the lamb they put out to slaughter. It's like, and something bad will happen. Like, damn Janet Yellen, like, just fire her and she'll get fired. And like, there we go, solve the problem. But I'm pretty sure she was not pulling the strings before. she had no idea what she was doing at the time. And
she was definitely a novice at the time.
She's there, yeah. And so on the topic of FDIC insurance, like Caitlin Long, long time Bitcoiner, but also very deep in the regulatory and banking system, pulls out this great thing, right? So I've always said, ever since FDIC insurance got mentioned on this pod, which was, you can trust it. Make sure your bank or your crypto or Bitcoin exchange has FDIC insurance. You want your insurance up to certain levels. And I always went, look, when the fucking time happens, this insurance ain't paying out. There's just no way. I knew the amount of money in the pot was not going to make the whole. And Caitlin just really puts it out there and puts out the 2 key numbers, right? So the FDIC insurance fund has 128 billion in it, but this is in the US only. It's all US numbers, these. But the US commercial banks have 17.6 trillion in them. And so it's 1,000 billion for every trillion. So this basically works out at roughly
100.
What's that?
Is it 100 times difference?
Yeah, roughly, like 1%. Yeah. So they have about 1% of the insurance covers the deposits.
But that's good for fractional reserves, isn't it?
Yeah. To be fair, actually, it's quite a good fractional reserve. But it means if 2% of the deposits get lost in banks, they're already out by double.
Oh shit! Yeah, I haven't really thought it that way. I think I misread the numbers initially.
Yeah. So it basically means, which is why they didn't even use the FDIC insurance for these 5 banks yet. No FDIC insurance has been paid out because already they'd be over. They're already over their 1%.
So they need 1% of the money to be
I'm pretty sure just SVB Bank, I think they were about the 100 billion. So that would be this insurance gone.
No,
SVB,
it was
right?
three banks were 500, SVB were 200,
200
Silver
billion.
Yeah, 200 billion. The other one was 100 billion, the Silver, whatever it was, and then the third one, which I think we had. Have we got a story about it? The third one.
Yeah, it's the next.
First Republic, I think, were 200, and Silvergate were 100, if I remember correctly. But SVB, I'm pretty sure, were 200 billion.
Yeah.
So, but whilst he makes a really good point, FDIC are just another government organisation or arm. So therefore, haven't we got Infinity?
No, well, it's basically where this money actually does come from is the banks all pay into this insurance fund, and they're supposed to be paying in a decent amount. And obviously, this FDIC stamp of approval, people are told, like, don't put your money in a bank unless it has FDIC regulatory insurance on it. And this is just exposing the fact that it's complete virtue signaling. It means nearly nothing. Even if you have FDIC insurance, it might work in the odd instance where the economy's working fine and your bank fucks up big in some kind of weird scam. But in the event of an economic collapse, FDIC insurance is worth dick. Fucking dick, FDIC.
So therefore, there's no protection for the average person or the average small business or business that uses a bank, because 250k for a consumer is a lot, but for a business isn't necessarily a lot. You could easily have that in expenses and outgoings in terms of vendors. And so
if we just think about this, you're saying for a consumer it's not a lot, but if you think what we were talking about before,
it is.
We're saying that people need over £1 million to retire. If you have that in one bank, you're fucked. That's everything. Yeah. You're literally going, oh, here's 250k. Well, where's my other 750k? I can't live off this for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's your pension pot. It's everything. Yeah. If you ever want to retire, you need a substantial sum. And obviously, what we're saying here is you're not covered. So even if you just have your 10k or your 5k, whatever amount of money you do have, like you said, like the majority of people are below, because in the UK it's 85k. 85k pounds is the limit in UK banks. So most people think, well, I'm well below that limit. I'm fine. Even if my bank goes bust, I'll get my money back. And what we're basically saying is, no, when your bank goes bust, you ain't getting your 5k back, your 10k, your 15. Don't think that just because you're below the 85, you're getting your money back. It's fine. It's insured.
But also, if you do get your money back, they're going to have printed so much money, but it's worthless.
Correct.
Yeah,
that is the case.
They'll add a couple of zeros to it, and yeah.
Where has that new money come from? Should your existing money evaporate out of nowhere?
So kind of going
it's just ridiculous, right?
Yeah. I was just thinking going on to the next one, because we've touched upon like the point of the banks going down. And the next one is Mr. All-In pumping his tweets again.
This was from Reddit. I copy and paste stuff from Reddit now because I don't trust that Reddit's going to be up.
Oh yeah, this is a good point.
So this is First Republic, who admittedly I haven't really got into the story of what's happening, but it started off at about $150 a share, and within we got 2 weeks, we've gone down to $15.77. So a lovely red candle there, which is what's on Mr. All-In's tweets, which he's looking to pump up those numbers.
And I just nicked a Reddit post, and I think actually, the title's not on here, but it actually said this isn't a shitcoin chart, because it posted in the Bitcoin Reddit, and usually you'll see this nice chart, so it goes from 2011 to 2023, and it's all green, pretty much all the way up. It's just, it goes from like, I don't know, about $20 all the way up to $220. Just nice and steady. Yeah, it's over a 10-year period. Really solid bank, and then in the space of 2 weeks, it goes to zero.
Yeah, 5th of November, it had its 2021, it had its peak of 219. And then even as lately as the 3rd of March, it's 123.
Yeah. And it looks like a rug pull, right? It looks like oh, like some celebrity has promoted this coin. They've been promising things for a number of years, or I suppose in a shitcoin land, just a couple of months. And then once they realize, oh, people are going to find this out, there's nothing to deliver, they just dump all their founder tokens and the price goes to zero. This is the 14th largest US bank, First Republic. And over a decade, they grew their share price from $20 to $220. And in the space of 2 weeks, it went to zero. This is nuts. We are literally witnessing right now the collapse of the financial system.
So this is a threat of a bank run, because a lot of our lenders' deposits are uninsured. Is it caused by what they're holding, that their existing money, or is it just the fact that being uninsured deposits? Because
I'm not sure what the detail of the First Republic one is, because that's just their share price, right? So it essentially means that the confidence in the market in their shares is literally zero. So yeah, so it's just another bank, right? It's just another one where people have just decided to go, I want to take my money out, and they've.
So is this
what I do think as well is interesting is obviously this is all being covered as always in real time on Bitcoin Twitter, but in the mainstream news it's not being covered, and obviously no one's really exposing the scam that is banks are insolvent, because if they were and people truly put two and two together and followed the breadcrumbs of what's happening, this would actually, it's like the dynamite fuse would go a lot quicker and we would hit the boom a lot sooner. But instead, we are slowly getting there, and people are getting it, but we are actually getting to the point of people understand what banks are doing or not doing behind the scenes, and I think it is going to end in catastrophe for those that are still. And it's hard to get out of the banking system, right? Because majority of people are paid wages that go into a bank, and therefore you need a bank when you're going to the shops, because the shops do not accept gold bars, gold coins, silver coins, or Bitcoin. So you have to stay in the fiat system.
So look into this. We've had SVB, we've had Signature Bank, we've had, is it Silvergate Bank?
Silvergate, yeah.
Credit Suisse, and now First Republic. So that's 5. Like we've had SVP were basically government bought for other companies. Credit Suisse,
they all have different use cases. You're right.
But Credit Suisse was bought by the Swiss government for, is it UBS, the name of the bank?
Yeah.
What about Signature Bank and Silvergate? How did those end up?
I'm not sure. I think they've all been swallowed by bigger banks.
Yeah.
So they're basically
HSBC.
So they're all, well, SVB UK was HSBC. We'll have to look into those two other ones, because that's interesting, because I'm just thinking they've basically been government bailed out again.
Yeah, because they've been bought by bigger banks on the proviso that the governments will cover any losses. So it's
here we go.
What we said right at the beginning, 5 bailouts in 10 days.
Citadel and BlackRock recently took major stakes in Silvergate. And then who's the other one?
Good old BlackRock. We have a little bit of Vanguard in there as well.
No, who was Signature Bank?
Yeah.
So who bought Signature Bank? New York Community Bank Corp has acquired $34 billion of deposits from failed lender Signature Bank.
There you go.
So bought by other banks every single time, bailed up by the government. So I think kind of what Janet Yellen was getting on about is they don't want to cause this crisis, but it's here. You can't just bail out 5 banks in close proximity and not expect people to realise.
There's kicking the can down the road. It's just you keep walking 5 steps and you meet the can again, and you got to kick it again, and eventually you run out of road. It's So yes, the last story we've got, we normally end on a bit of a high. This is a pretty dark note, right? So it's one of those, because I was at a family meal today, and people were just talking about, a Bitcoin standard, and Bitcoin potentially could cause this collapse, and I was like, it's not causing anything. Like the financial system is causing this, and it's a case of, but wouldn't it be great if things could just carry on?
Where had they read that Bitcoin was causing this?
I know, it's just, what's the escape? I think it's the fact that I was talking about how, like, what's going to happen during the collapse and how to be prepared for it. And they're like, we don't want this. And it's like, well, Bitcoin's not causing it. It's just the life raft off of it, because it's going to collapse anyway. Just the good job we've got life raft. And then I stumbled across this story today and just went, you know what? People think we're in a bit of a nirvana stage right now. They think that the American kind of one world is such a nirvana, almost so perfect. America, the greatest country in the world, stands for freedom, fucking fuck yeah, yeah. And then this video, which I'll play now.
America's never going to pay its debts. It doesn't have to. Its debts are in its own currency. We can simply print it. The African debt is not in its currency. The African debt is in U.S. dollars. Africa has to earn the U.S. dollars, and the only way it can earn the U.S. dollars is not to be assassinated for growing its own food and becoming independent and doing something that the United States does not like. The principle underlying the foundation of the World Bank is that no country should grow its own food. Africa and the third world should only grow export crops. To export, in order to have an oversupply of cocoa and other tropical raw materials, to keep down the price, they must buy their grain from the United States or Europe, so that if they do something that we don't like, we can do what America tried to do to China in the 60s. We can sanction them. We can say, we're going to starve you. We're going to not export any grain to you. So owing their foreign debt in dollars means that they have to somehow sell something that the United States wants, not what they want. I think the most evil organizations in the world today are the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund.
It really just shows what America's doing right now, and the control that America has on Africa, where it forces Africa to buy everything outside of its borders in US dollars, and it forces them to buy grain from America and just produce some type of resource from Africa that America wants. Not that what it wants, so it can be self-sustainable. It just wants, no, we need XYZ type of mineral or crop or whatever. Make that, because that's what we're short of. And what that allows America to do is at any point, it can starve out that country, because they are reliant on their grain from America. And this is what's happening right now. And I retweeted this, just going, this is a massive extension of the mob culture that existed in New York in 1930, when it was the whole, you need to pay us for insurance, otherwise your shop will get banged in. You go, well, who's going to bang it in?
Insurance against us. Yeah.
Yeah, we will. Pay us to not hurt you. That's what America's doing right now. It's extortion. It's, you need to use US dollars. Why? You might starve. Who's going to starve us? We will. And it's disgusting. This is the world we live in right now. And why would you not want to burn this down and start again? It's disgusting.
Yeah, you're right. It's been a bit of an eye opener for me, because I've dropped it into our chat. I was listening to Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and everything's all right. I'm kind of going, I know about bits of Iraq and Iran. I was just like, Saudi Arabia, I know that. And then it started talking about Panama and Ecuador, and it's like the presidents they're involved in plane accidents, and there were presidents who fought against the Americans, and these plane accidents happened within 2 months, and then strangely a sympathetic to America president took over and let them have their way, and basically it's resources, loans and so on to time to be to make sure they toe the line to America. And at first I was just like, this is bullshit. I'm like, this has got to be a bit made up. So I had a look on Wiki, and Wiki, anyone can edit, but the American government will make sure they damn edit it. And even America couldn't hide it. And you kind of just going, my God, it was even so many years down the line, that was an eye-opener. And it is disgusting. It was probably one of the most shocking books which I've actually, listened to.
Yeah, I imagine the amount of money that people in America and in the UK have raised for like starving kids in Africa and all that kind of stuff. And then you just look at it and you suddenly zoom out and you go, why are they struggling so much? And then you suddenly realize, oh, they're forced to buy grain from America with US dollars. They're not allowed to make it themselves because no one will buy it for US dollars. So they're forced to make some random crops that they don't need. They are plentiful in that thing. They need grain, and they are forced to make something else because they know that the Americans won't buy anything else from them for US dollars. And you suddenly realize that, holy shit, not only are these countries really struggling and are genuinely behind anyway, someone has a foot on their head holding them underwater, and they let them up for a gasp of air, then shove them back down again. That is the great America. That is who we are supposedly meant to be. Like, what a great little nirvana, little life we all lead.
But don't worry, Biden and his administration are promoting pronouns, so it should fix it.
And that's the level of distraction we are, because we're obviously so far removed from those third world countries, right? And we have no clue as to, because not only are we pushing on more other woke policies, we're telling countries like Africa, oh, your carbon emissions have to be zero, It's like, you do realize during our industrial revolution, we just fucked up the planet hugely. Our carbon emissions were crazy until we figured it out. And now we can almost have the luxury of maybe trying to cut back on some carbon emissions. And you're going over to countries that are 100 years behind us going, oh yeah, your industrial revolution? Yeah, you have to skip it straight to electric, straight to hydro. And they're like, what the fuck, dude? We're starving. Can we just use some coal, use some oil? And not only that, not only are we pushing all these kind of dumbass climate change restrictions on them, we're holding back their and another classic line that he says in here, oh, if you don't comply, we'll put sanctions on you and no one will be able to transact with you financially. And as we know, there's various countries that are on sanctions lists, and you go, yeah, they're the ones that didn't want to play ball. And you genuinely do get locked out. When I was starting up a bank in Puerto Rico, one of the reasons why I left is they wanted to comply to the sanctions list. And I had never looked at it properly before. And entire countries were on there. I mean, we're meant to be a global bank. That was the whole point. We're setting up a bank. And we're just cutting off entire countries. Why are we doing that? And it was just, well, if we don't, the FBI will arrest us if one citizen from that country can bank with us. I mean, why are we making every single citizen inside a country basically a terrorist level citizen? It doesn't seem right to me. And this is why. And in reality, the citizens, and there's nothing wrong with the citizens, there's nothing wrong with the country. Really what happened is they fell out of the US. They declined to do some type of deal with them and wanted to be self-sufficient. And so they put on a sanction. They declined
the debt to the IMF, to America, to the World Bank, whoever it was, and they declined giving America first access to all their resources.
Being blocked out of the financial system is something that actually happens more and more to individuals. And it's one of those things that we kind of take for granted that, within the Western world, we always have access to banks because we comply. But the minute that you're not, then you're fucked. But this is something that's happening to countries on a bigger scale, as you just detailed there as well. And, they are forced to continue to, trade in dollars, trade with America, trade and do various different things. And if they don't, then they have no choice. One of the key things that we probably should talk about is also the BRICS. We've got the BRICS that are starting to form, and recently Xi Jinping also re-met with Putin following from the ICC issuing an arrest warrant for Putin as well. And these guys have met now, is being detailed, over 40 times in the last 10 years or so. So, the Russian president and the Chinese leader and president, and they are keen to make a stand against the West. And that's because they're like, it's time for change.
Yeah, I'm never sure how much of the WWE show that we're watching. Sometimes I root for the heel, and I'm like, am I just rooting for a heel because they are made out to be the heel? But my summary of like the pod tonight would just be: the more I dig into the existing financial system, the more I realize it's run by puppets that have no fucking clue what they're talking about. When you zoom out, the atrocities that have been performed by the existing financial rulers are more disgusting than you can ever imagine. And I'm just more bullish on Bitcoin than ever. And I just can't wait to move on to Bitcoin Standard, because I just can't be more positive about just sound money and what it will bring. Because the amount of corruption that will be removed from the world is just immense. And the longer I'm in Bitcoin, the more bullish I get and the more hopeful I get that we get there, because there's billions of people right now just getting fucked by the US dollar, and it needs to change. We need to go into a Bitcoin Standard where everyone has a fair chance. So just buy Bitcoin and let's just ride this one out. It's going to be some fucking rough waters. We're going to get some rough times, but I think on the other side of those rough waters, a Bitcoin Standard, I've never been more hopeful, never been as bullish, and never been more critical and just negative against the existing system that we have. It just seems to stink the more that you delve.
Well, there we have it. That was pod 91. It's always fascinating, and it still fascinates me still to this point how the pod writes itself. And the agendas and these stories all come together. But where will we be in another week's time after we've just seen 5 banks collapse in the last 10 days? Stay tuned, because Mr. All In, aka the $1 trillion man, Dr. Evil 10%, aka the People's Champ, myself, Sir Neverlook, aka the Excellence of Execution, and Mrs. No Show, still, aka Mrs. No Show, will bring you another show all on Bitcoin. The 4 Bs. Peace.